they just I broke down and they just couldn't do it. So it took me a long time to do it, but with Jim's help, we finally got it all together, got the manuscript down, and then comes another process of publishers. But we're here. But I want to throw that in before I continue, because I know some of my classmates that are here that read it. I'm looking at this. Dora was one of the first ones. I said, did you write it? She said, not everything's wrong. Remember, you give an editor 3 sentences, and he's going to make a paragraph out of that 3 sentences. That's what they get paid for. But the one thing I made sure that everything I wanted in there was in there, and the way it happened. From the blood to my tears, everything. Okay. Now, going back some before I get to it again. As I said before, I was raised here. And the one thing that was in my heart all the time when I was here, that's why I came out 138 out of 140, was football. I love football. And that was my goal to go to college to play college football. And my junior year was a good year for me, and I received letters from colleges all over. I was able to keep them. So I guess I was on my way. Then we had a change of coaches my senior year. Things didn't work out real well. I was hurt all the time. So I didn't progress like I wanted to. The one thing I regret, and the teachers and the coaches always told me, you have to do your schoolwork. You have to have the grades. And I kept saying, no. And when it came right down to it, my grades weren't good enough to go to the bigger colleges. I remember one time, Coach Murphy called me to his office and said, okay, where do you want to go play? And I said, of course, that was my college. I said, Notre Dame. Right? He said, don't have the grades. I said, what do you mean you don't have the grades? I told you, he said, you've got to have the grades. I've been telling you since last year. And you know, I was lazy. Lourdes, Sylvia, Yolanda, all them. And Diana. They help in the classes. You know, hey, and they would go 2 for B, 1 for A. And that's how they passed me. So, you know, everything was my fault. It was all my fault. And I got lucky, coaching from A&I, and A&I was no little chummy school at that time. Call me and told me to go down there and want to talk to you, and I did, and Bob, and I ended up getting a scholarship for them. And there's some more to it, but I'm not going to go spend too much time on it. But I was very proud, and I had to go to summer school because, like I said, I didn't have the grades, so I had to go to summer school to get into the school. And they gave me PE 1, PE 2, and PE 3 for my first 3 classes. And all the coaches were the teachers, instructors. So anyway, I went in and there was 126 freshmen that went in with me, and I was like shocked. I said, whoa. And you know, I was in the low pole. The most I got was all district in high school. And there was others ahead of me that were all staters, all Americans, that came down also. And you talk about a very strenuous 2-week workout in college. I mean, it was the toughest thing I ever went through. Every day, same thing, fights, every day. And one thing they always told us, never take off your helmet. Because if you get in a fight, keep your helmet on. You never know what's going to be flying. And that's the way it was. My freshman year, I mean, it was like real tough. But I bypassed a whole bunch of the recruits that came in. And in the second game, before we started the second game of the season, I had the defensive coach walked over to where I was. I was with the offense. I was still holding the dummies. When you're holding dummies, that means you're not going to do much. Okay, you're just going to be there holding dummies. And he came and said, "Come with me." And I followed him and said, "Oh, what do I do now?" And I walked over there and walked over to where the defense was. And he took me down to where the strong corner position was. He said, "This is yours. Learn it." And I was like, I never played that position. And I was like shocked, and I'm looking at the guys, and they're looking at me. I had 2 All-Americans that were playing safety there with me. I had linebackers that were All-Americans. Some were all-conference. I had linemen that were all-conference. I mean, and one thing about college compared to high school, the guys are bigger, they're stronger, and they're faster. So you had to adapt to that real quick. And I did, and for 4 years, I stayed in the same position for 4 years. Nobody ever took it away from me. I give credit to the way some of the coaches raised me here, Coach Garza. And the school, the way I grew up in school, had a lot to do with it. One thing about football, after my last game, I was in the field. I was running a little bit, trying to get some soreness out of me. And Coach Jonas comes to me and says, "Robert." I said, "Yeah, Coach." I was through playing already. He says, "I got you a workout with the Warriors." I said, "You want to know if you'll go or not?" And I looked at him and said, "Coach, there's no way. My knees are killing me. My back is killing me. I mean, it's a brutal sport. And to this day, I feel it. And things to remember about every game that I played, right after the game and the day after the game, my body was useless. I mean, I could barely move. I didn't want to move around a lot, sore. Next day is even worse. The third day, everybody's in the training room getting work on. The fourth day, the same thing. Come Friday, then you start moving. Come Saturday, the game, and then the cycle starts all over. And that's the way it was. And I did graduate, even though I was 138. I did graduate, and I coached for a while, and I just didn't like it. It wasn't for me. My dad saw a sign that said UPS wants you, and I said, "Oh," I called Albert Rodriguez, I don't know if y'all know him or not, because he was also teaching with me. And I said, "Albert, I'm going to DPS, I want to sign up." Wait for me. And we both went, and we both got hired. So I started my career with ATF. with BPS. And tough school, at the time that we went, it was extremely tough. A lot of boxing. Guys were so scared of boxing that they would quit the school before they even boxed once. And I made it, and I worked the road for a while, and the thing I can remember the most about when I was on the road, on the first time that my officer that was breaking me in told me, okay, you drive today, you give the tickets. All right. The first car I stopped, over the door got out, and you know how you see that, put on the gun belt and down, and, fix your hat. And Highway Patrol stepped to the back, and here comes this woman. And she comes out cussing me every way. I mean, ma'am, and she was cussing me, and all this training, all this machismo. I mean, I was like, I looked at my training officer, and he came over and took over for me. But that was a big lesson to me. Don't trust the women when they come out. And later transferred to narcotics. And that's when I started learning how to work undercover. It came easy for me. I don't know why. Maybe my background, where I came from. And I had two guys that worked with me and were breaking me in. Especially one that was crazy. I mean, crazy agent. You have to be crazy to do that kind of work. And I remember him breaking me in. I said, "Where are we going?" I'll have a CI that knows a guy here that's selling marijuana. At that time, marijuana was illegal. And I said, "Oh, good." He said, he comes out and gives me $400. He said, go buy a pound. I said, what? What? I mean, I panicked. Never done it. And he laughed. "Oh, George, you have to know him to really." And I said, "George, I know how to do this." "Yeah, you'll learn. You'll learn. Just go there, knock on the door, and tell you what about some help." And man, I was nervous as heck. I go and knock, and the guy looked me over. And everything is Spanish. That moment I worked, everything was Spanish. And he told me that, I said, "Man, that dumb sucker." He sold me a pound. And from there, everything was easy. About made buys of 200 pounds, 400 pounds. Everything was easy for me. And then one day I said, well, I'm going with the feds. They give you more money, better benefits. So I went with ATF. And went to another academy. I went through 3 academies. 2 academies through my career. And each one was always less tougher than the feds. They're nice, And so I was stationed in Houston first, and found out real quick that I was Hispanic, and they would use me to do undercover buys. And I would buy explosives, illegal weapons, machine guns. Until I got smart and said, why am I buying all this stuff for everybody else? Let them do their own work. And from that time on, I did my own undercover. If they wanted undercover, you give me the case, because at that time, we didn't get credit for anything we did, we did the other cover. It was the other guy got it. So I then transferred to Cali, and I was there for most of my time until a friend of mine calls me and says, I had just gotten off a suspension. I was a little crazy in my times when I was working, and music got me in trouble. This time, I did deserve it, but I got suspended for 30 days, and I took it, fine. Then I came back, I was trying to get back into it, and David calls me and says, hey, yeah, I got this big case, and I'm gonna need somebody that can probably do the undercover. I don't know anybody else that can do it, I know you can. And I said, yeah, I'll do it for you, Dave. Why not? Gets me out of here. Where is it? It's in Waco, Texas. Okay, so be here by a certain date and stuff. So I show up in Austin, and from that day on, there was a lot of adjustments that had to be made. First, I was an outsider coming from another district, and guys sometimes don't like outsiders to come to the district and have to work with somebody. And so I didn't really know him, but slowly I tried to get used to him. And they were all young. I called them young kids at that time. They were all young. And after Davey told me what was going to have to happen and what I was going to have to do, I said, Dave, these guys can't do that. I can tell you right now, they can't do it. I can tell you somebody can work undercover on that. He said, I know, man, but they're from here, and we gotta see what happens. Working undercover, touching it a little bit. It's a kind of a different breed. Guys that work narcotics, like DEA and some of the locals that work narcotics, have to be a special breed. Can't be afraid. You can't be nervous. You just gotta be dumb to go in there and try to work a deal. And when I say dumb, not an idiot, but you have to know how to work. And I had gotten pretty good at it. I had done undercover work. Guys, PDs would call me, I'd go undercover in weird places. Go-go dancing places, I'd go undercover. You give me $2,000, go in there and try to buy as much coke as you can. Oh yeah, give me $2,000, I'll do it. And I did undercover in all kinds of places. And you have to be able to block everything out. You gotta block who you are and take the role of somebody else that you're not. And negotiating, you have to know how to negotiate. You gotta be able to think real fast, not hesitate, or else you get in trouble. And I'll give you a quick example and I'll give this example of law enforcement. One of the sessions that I was having with Koresh, I was there listening to him as he rambled about the government, about the dragons, the lions. I mean, this guy was a trip. And I had been there for almost 2 hours. And when he finally got through, I got up and started leaving. And he goes, Robert, I used the name Robert Gonzalez as my undercover name. And I picked Robert because I want to make sure I respond if somebody calls me Robert, without turning. But he calls me and he said, Robert, people say I'm the Messiah. And I'm looking at him. And he says, what do you think? Okay, so now he put me in the spot, right? So I'm there, and I didn't stand there and go, let's see. Let me see. What do I say to this guy? My response was real quick. Since you're my godson, I'll ask you the question. If I was Koresh and I asked you, Robert, people say I'm the Messiah. What do you think? Wait.
It's possible.
Huh?
What I would want to say is you really can't say, but you're also contributing to his beliefs. So if you're in the role, then you have to kind of play it out.
But what I did right away, I went up to him, I put my arm on his left shoulder, and I said, I don't know, David, but your words are very strong. And he looked at me and said, I like that. All right, And I got out and I went, I said, there he is, testing me again. But that was part of undercover, right? And he had to kind of respond. If I would have said, yeah, David, I think you're the Messiah, he probably would have said, oh man, this guy is an idiot. And if I would have said, no, I don't think you are, then probably would have said, well, get out of here then, I don't want you here. So he was the type of guy you have to play with his mind, because he played with your mind. So I knew that about him already, just by being with him. So it helped me to continue the communication with him throughout my time as I worked undercover. But toughest thing I ever did. That's the toughest thing I ever did. You go to the place that smells, no running toilets. He was the only one that had a toilet. And the women every day would come out and empty the buckets outside. And they dressed like they did in the Western days. I mean, it was just completely different country, you might say. And sometimes I'll be there and I'll just look at everybody come in and out. At first, somebody would talk to you, but after a while, everybody, hey, Robert, how you doing? I became well known in the compound. But I hated every minute I was there. I hated being there. And supervisors kept bugging me, we need this, and we need that, and we need this, and we need that. And when you're doing undercover work, it's a kind of you take it easy first. You gotta find out what's going on. How am I gonna do this? How am I gonna do that? And they didn't have the patience for all that. Everything was quick. And they were lucky enough that I was able to do that. So, being there, working undercover, was hard on my body and hard on my mind. Because you go in there and here's this guy that for hours would talk to you about the apocalypse, the end of the world, the white horse, the red horse, black horse, pale horse. Now, y'all ever see a pale horse, you're in trouble. But that was something that was, constantly. And You got to where I would leave the compound, go to our undercover house, and it was in my mind. All the time, the guys would say, hey, they go over it, close it, no. But it was hard to. And every day I would go through that, and they couldn't understand the punishment I was taking in my body and in my mind. The day before the raid, it was gonna, they set a date of the 30th of March 1st. So I went in for the last time in proclamation. I wasn't gonna come back for a while. And he asked me that he wanted me to come back and be part of his congregation. Give it a try. I said, sure. Because I knew I was going to come back anyway. And I went back to the undercover house, and I was relieved that it was over. And my supervisor called, hey Robert, they're doing a publication, the paper, on the sinful Messiah. And we need for you to go back in there and see what the response is. And I told him, Chuck, I can't. I already told the man I was leaving. If I show up, he's going to get suspicious. That's the way he is. I know this guy. No, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to find out. So there, I said, okay. So I go and call him, and he says, yeah, we don't have mass on Saturday. You come in. And I'm there 12 hours listening to this guy talk about the apocalypse, the end of the world. And I'm there, women are on one side, men are on the other side. Men never get up. Women, they come and go. They take food to him as he speaks. And here I was, first 6 hours. Also, I want to use the restroom. But nobody got up on the men's side, so I couldn't get up. So I had to sit there for 6 hours. And then we left, and they come back for another 6 hours till midnight. It was the same thing. He used, I don't know, brainwashed all these people to believe in a certain way in the book of Revelations. That's the last book in the Bible in the New Testament, in case y'all don't know where it is. There's no other books. That's the last book. Supposedly written by John, one of the apostles. When I was there, he gave me a Bible for me, for my own, to bring in whenever I came for his Bible studies. And I had this Bible. And I take it in with me. And I followed when he was talking, describing to me about when he went to the book of Daniel, or went to the book of Ezekiel. That's in the New Testament, in case anybody doesn't know. And he would describe what went on in those books. Constantly. And that Bible played a role towards the end. And it's in the book, but when I left that day, the day before the raid, I was thankful that for me it was over. So I was on the undercover house. We had snipers over there getting ready, and preparations were being made everywhere. And there goes Chuck, he called me. It was about 12 midnight. He says, Robert, I need for you to go in one more time in the morning and check to make sure things are still all right. Things are okay for us to go on with the raid. And I said, Chuck, I cannot do that. And I cannot be out by 9 o'clock like he said. When I go in and talk to him, he keeps me in there as long as he wants. And if I just jump and say I gotta go, I get suspicious. I can't do it. I can't guarantee you anything. He says, and we got to know, Robert, we got to know. Please, you gotta do it for the guys. I said, so they're trying to figure out a way to get in there in the morning. That's the morning before the raid. I go into the compound at like 7:30, and we're supposed to start with the raid at 9:30 in the morning. So they want me out by then. Who knows what's going to happen? So I was there with them, and we're talking about the Sinful Messiah publication that came out in the paper. He was upset with it, but not really. He was really saying. And then after a certain attempt to get him out from the room where I was sitting with him, right next to him. He finally leaves, and he comes back. Everything's changed. Demeanor, everything. And he sits down, and he's trying to continue where he was. And he had the Bible in his hand. You know, he was shaking. And I grabbed the book and I said, "You okay, David?" That's the kind of relationship I have with him already. The guy liked me. What can I say? He said, "Yes, everything's okay." So he sat down, and then he gets up. He gets up. And he walks to the front window, it's on the left side, and he says, looks outside, and I'm looking at him, and he says, "They're coming, Robert. They're coming. The ATF and the National Guard, they're coming." And he goes to the next window and says, "They got me once, but they won't get me again." And I'm looking at him, comes to my mind, God, he knows. He knows about the raid. So there I am, right in the middle. By that time, more of the soldiers come into the room. So now it's full. It went from 3 people to a lot of the soldiers were there. And I'm sitting there, I'm saying to myself, relax, relax. Don't get nervous, just relax. So I sat there like nothing's happened, and he still kept going back and forth saying the same thing. Finally I get up and I say, "Oh, David, you guys are waiting for me to go eat breakfast. So I want to go and meet him." And I get up, and he's still going back and forth. And I'm looking at him. Everything's quiet. And he walks up to me, and this is the first time he ever shook my hand. But he looks at me, and I look at him. It's like, I know he knows. He probably thinks that he knows who I am by now. And he says, "Okay, Robert." Puts his hand out. I shake his hand. I say, "Good luck, David." He says, "Good luck, Robert." And he does this, and he kind of open up, it's like a walk to the outside door. And by that time, I was already thinking, they don't let me out, I'll go to the window, I'll jump to the window. If I have to, if he's there, I'll take him with me. Because I knew I had snipers. They would cover me from the undercover house about 200 yards away. And once he said, "Good luck, Robert," and I said, "Good luck," I started walking out slowly, like trying to be real cool. But deep inside, I was scared as hell. I didn't think I was going to get out. But they let me out, I got to my Blazer that was parked outside, and tried to put the key in the ignition, and I could not put the key in the ignition. I had to get my other hand, grab it, and start it and get out. And that's where everything went to hell. And that's why the book is named They Know We're Coming. I go to the undercover house and I tell everybody what's happening. They know we're coming. They know the National Guard's coming. They know ATF is coming. Call Chuck. So I call Chuck. And I tell him, Chuck, they know. They know. They know we're coming. He said, okay, you see any guns? I said, no, I didn't see any guns. What's commercial wearing? And I told him. He says, okay, bye. That's it. And so I left undercover house and headed to the command post where he was. By the time I got there, he had left. And it was too late. I started yelling to everybody, why are we going? They know we're coming. Why are we going? And I didn't hear him up. I mean, you're talking about a place where you have at least 100 people, computers, everything, command center. And then I started yelling out, somebody give me a gun. I left my gun somewhere, I didn't have it. And somebody give me a blank gun. And Phil Lewis was in charge of the command center, told everybody, don't give him anything. Don't give him anything. So I went outside, sat down, and I was there sitting, and one of the lady agents comes out and says, you doing all right? I said, no, you know what's going on? I asked her, he said, a lot of shooting going on. We have agents down, and they're hurt. Man, and just blew my top. And well, and the rest is in the book. So now you know why it's titled, They Know We're Coming. But I will tell you that writing it was very hard for me. And even a lot of times, like I said, I'll take that into you because I remember things that occurred. It's, you know, I was also with SWAT teams, SRTs we call it. And, you know, you practice for a lot of things. And you're trained to see one of your agents get hurt, fall, you know, and a lot of us can take a lot of that. But for me, especially when I try to stop it, you know, I was right there in the middle of it and saw all this carnage that went down, people that were killed, hurt, blood all over the place. It's a lot different than, I don't know, you being a SWAT team member. They took it a lot better. As for me, I felt like it was my fault that all that happened. And then if you read the book, you'll see that when supervisors get in trouble, they all get together and they say, oh, we gotta do this so we can cover our butts. And that's what they did. I was the one to blame on the whole thing. So here I was by myself, and everybody looking at me like, God, all your fault that this happened. And it was a long struggle, and finally, USA had won, the truth came out. And I was able to cope and live with myself a little bit better. And that's when I really started writing the book. And I got into it real deep. And Jim did a good job in writing what I wanted. Sometimes it didn't make sense, and I'll call him, Dr. Jim, I want you to listen to me real carefully on how this happened. And then he listened and said, oh, okay, I got it. And he would change it to correspond with what I was saying. So, you know, I don't know what I can say to y'all, but I hope when you read the book, it's going to be a lot to do with religion, the seals, the seven seals. Have you ever heard about that? No? Anybody? Book of Revelation, the book of the seven seals, as it says, where certain horses appear. They're let loose by the Lamb, who is God. And all these horses have a certain duty to perform. But it's always saying to cause chaos throughout the world, cause wars, killings, famine for drought. I mean, we name it, everything. And then you have the sixth seal where all these people that have died are laying at the feet of the Lamb of God, asking him, when do we come back? And he tells them, not until everybody is gone. And on the seventh seal, that's when you hear the thunder, you hear all the crying, the yelling, the fire of everybody being destroyed and killed. And like I told the FBI at that time, he's not coming out. He's going to follow those seven seals right to the end. Exactly. And sure enough, we did it for him. Everybody died like supposed to, like the seventh seal. Fire, pain, crying, yelling. That's the way it happened. So all his preaching came true. The seven seals. And they have stuck in my mind for all these years. Whenever I hear something about the four horsemen, first thing I think, seven seals. They're coming. I just don't want to see the pale horse. If I see the pale horse, we're in trouble. And they're supposed to come back in 2 years after they all die. But nothing around. Yeah. So that telling the whole story in the book is highlights to it. Of course, there's a lot more to it. He tested me a lot when I was in there. You know, always able to respond to it. He could never outsmart me. That's the way I look at it. And I won't end with this one. When he first gave me the Bible for me to take home, tell you how lucky I was. He said, this is yours. You bring them with you whenever you come. I said, okay. And when I came back the following day, I bring my Bible. He said, oh, good, let's sit down. And at that time, we always had like 2 soldiers with him all the time. And he says, turn to the Psalms. I never read the Bible. what are Psalms? And they're waiting, so I get the Bible, and I just open it. And I look on top, it says Psalms 147, I'll never forget. And I look down, and think, 148. There's gotta be a 47. So I went right, and sure enough, there was. And then he signals to one of his guys to go see if he knows what he's doing. And then he goes and looks. Yeah, he got it. I said, yeah, Barry, I got it. Yeah. So he's talking about luck. And he says, oh. I said, good. And then we continue. But, you know, sometimes it takes luck. And I had a lot of luck with me. Especially that I survived. It took me a long time. And maybe I didn't survive mentally for a long time. Because it's still, roadkill, I go around it, I don't look at it. Some movies where I see certain things, I don't look at it. So it's the last thing stayed in my mind, especially the smell of human blood. Because I had it all over me, from here all the way down to my shoe. So it's something to forget. I was lucky I survived. And now I'm here talking to people from my hometown like I promised Lourdes that I would do. And I hope you gotta read the book. You'll like it. It may be hard to understand sometimes when I'm talking about religion, because I'm talking about the stuff he used to tell me during the time I was there. Because a lot of this stuff I still remember. I don't talk about it, but I remember a lot. So, does anybody have any questions?
Robert.
You money. I knew you would be the one.
Excuse me. Time out, Marvin. Before we continue, I'd like to introduce you to our sheriff, Miss County Sheriff.
Oh, really? Sorry.
And so now we're going to do the question and answer session. But Robert, feel free to say.
Yeah. No, I can go all day with this stuff.
So while you're doing the question and answer, we're gonna set up for the refreshment. And if everybody got a ticket for the door prizes, Cindy was giving some.
Some of the last people who walked in late, I got you covered.
Okay.
Irene,
Okay.
Mary H. Yeah.
Jen, you have a question?
I have a question,
Okay.
and I don't want it to sound
Wait,
cruel.
let me see. Madita, the chair one first?
I've got a question for you. And I've read the book. The book is compelling. It's not hard to read. Even the religious part is very well explained.
I'm trying to make it easy for you.
I was 198 out of 200. But no, the book is incredible. In fact, I couldn't put it down, Robert, once I started it. I think it was the next day that I finished it. And one question, of course, you didn't cover a lot of this because it's in the book, obviously, about how they found out that there was going to be this raid. But the question I've got is, when you went back the next morning,
The other raid?
the day of the raid, yeah, after you had been there the day before, did you notice anything different about the cult members, about their attitude? Was it fatalistic? Or they didn't know until someone called Koresh to go, and I guess it was the postman or whatever that had revealed the details about it.
Everything was as normal as could be. He was Koresh,
Yes.
and we were there talking like we always did. And what happened was that this is another reason why the raid really should have gone on. The media got a hold of it, and there was media in front of the compound going back and forth. I mean, there was like New York City going right in front of the compound. All media. I mean, and one of the media members that wasn't from Puerto got lost, And he stopped the postman that worked that area, who was at the video.
Right.
And the postman asked him, hey, you lost? Yeah, I'm looking for the compound. They called the compound. And he says, yeah, it's pointed to where it was. He said, is anything going on or what? Should I stay away? Like, he's a postman, staying in the park. He said, yeah, there's gonna be something happening here pretty soon, so you better just stay away. So he goes, runs straight to the compound while I'm in there. And that's when they try to call Koresh to come out and talk to him. He finally does, and that's how he knows that the rain is coming.
And that's when Koresh came out and he was trembling.
Yeah. And it was, the media, got it, just blew it open, and we just never should have gone with the rain. Never should have. Yeah, and he finally admitted, so we found out how, that they did know that the rain was coming because of that. And once they found out, like, through that, then, you know, ahorita when you say a lie, that it gets bigger, and it gets bigger, and before you know it,
Sure.
you can't cover it anymore. And that's what happened to him. Little piece at a time. The story of the supervisors started falling apart until it just completely blew up.
Robert, you should tell the audience here about when you walked out on that morning to your blazer, and when your hand was
I
trembling.
did. I did.
But what I'm saying is what your thoughts were with the steps from the front door to the vehicle, and what you were thinking that was gonna happen. hitting
I
your
fear they
back.
were shooting the back,
Yeah.
shooting the head or something.
Yeah.
That's where they were.
And what was the distance?
From the door,
From the door to the truck?
25 yards?
25 yards.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
My question isn't meant to sound disrespectful, but more out of.
Sure, it's fine.
curiosity.
I'm here. You can abuse me all you want.
Do you think with the passage of time and the writing of your book and the fact that you're posting in your hometown where you grew up
Uh-huh.
and people love you, do you think you're gonna get to a point where you can forgive yourself for what you feel was your role in it, even though you were just playing a part?
That's a good question. There's a part, page,
Robert.
I wanna answer. At the end of your book, remember I said, I was so worried about you through every chapter, the way it's written, right? Like I said, I didn't know the ending. But at the end, when you put forth your deepest emotions and everything, and what you thought, what you felt, what you say at the end, for me, it was like a affirmation that you accepted what happened, that you forgave yourself for what happened, and how you were vindicated. That you have to
I
be-
forgave myself for what happened, but the thoughts are always there.
Of course.
Okay, for example, when I wrote the book and I go back to look at it, I don't know why, but I keep going. There's a part like page, starts on page 194, so it's the time when I left the command center, when they told me that that there was a firefight going on and guys were being hurt, one was already killed. That's when I got in my blazer. I had a blue blazer at that time, and I took off towards the compound. And when I read this is one part, I keep reading it so I can try to get over it. Because every time I read it, I start crying. Because there was a lot of emotion there at the time when I was headed towards the compound to more or less commit suicide. I call it kamikaze. My mind was already set to drive there full speed and ram the truck into the compound and take down as many as I could. And if I went, I went. And you're thinking about all this. You're actually, as I read it, I'm thinking back to the way I was sitting in my blazer. It was a good heavy blazer. And I'm thinking, just go with what I'm already speeding. You don't see anything but what's in front of you. Yeah, I can explain that. It's like you're in a daze, and I'm just going, and I go on and get on 2491, which was the road to the compound, and I'm starting to breathe heavier, and I'm thinking, kamikaze, you can do it, just go there, and that's it. That's gonna be the end for me. But I was gonna do my part, whatever I could. But it just so happened that Phil Lewis, who was in charge of the command center, called the highway patrol, because they knew where all the checkpoints were. And they said, whatever you do not let Rodriguez get through. So when I got to that, all of a sudden I see this checkpoint. And damn, but they were there waiting for me. There was about 4 of them outside, and one of them I knew. And he was doing like this to me, and I started to slow down because I was still.
You recognized him?
Yeah,
From Laredo?
Yeah. Because somebody I had worked with before, Lino Martinez. And I stopped. I said, and I told him, and as I read this portion, I read it again, I can see it like if I'm still there talking to him. I gotta get through, Lino, I gotta get through. And they said, can't do that, Robert. Can't do that. So, that's the only part that when I look at it, it brings back the memories of what I was about to do. But damn it, I didn't get to do it. And it took me a long time to get over the fact that I wasn't able to do it. Yeah. But in reality, he saved my life. Yeah. And I went back to the command center, and that's another chapter.
Excuse me, I don't have a question. I just want to say that when the dust settled, the clearing, the compound was cleared, and it was open for visitors. My husband, Chuy, wanted to go there.
Wow.
Yes, and we went, and
You know, I didn't go.
yes, Chuy and our 2 girls and my
It
son.
wasn't there anymore.
No, but we walked into that house that they had there, and it was the most horrible feeling I had.
It was an undercover house.
And my thought was, and I told Chuy, can you imagine what Robert went through? So, all I wanna say is, thank you, Robert, and God bless you always.
Tell you, it was very hard, and to make matters worse, I had young guys that were working with me. When we got started, and I was gonna put this in the book, but I didn't want to, but all they did was complain. I wanna go home, man, nothing's going on, and oh, I miss my wife, I don't even know what she's doing. the truth. I wanna go home, I wanna be here, and I wanna be here, and I wanna be there, and they were only a few miles away. I was like, you know, city was Harlingen, and I was, what, 400 miles away? And I never complained. I was just there to do a job. And that's why they never really got anything done themselves. There was two of them, they did pretty good, they helped me out. But the rest, you know, sometimes, like I said, all agents are different. They all work different. Some are lazy, some are go-getters. I was one of the go-getters. And a lot of the agents sometimes don't like go-getters because it makes everybody else look bad. But that's the way I was. So,
Robert, I just want to thank you for sharing that story with us and the emotions that you went through. All of us have things that we have dealt with, but sharing that story is so, I mean, it's powerful.
thank you.
So I
Yeah.
want to thank you for sharing that.
I was actually trying to keep my cool, you know, through the whole thing, but then there's some sections that I read, and man, it's like, I close my eyes and I'm there. You know, I can hear all the yelling, the screaming, the guys that hurt. People going back and forth, ambulances, helicopters. And then when, now, I'll give you one more story. And when we brought all the hurt and dead to our triage area, you don't know what triage is? You know, there was a lot of going back and forth, media. I mean, just, we hated the media. I mean, we just hated the media. And they came, David came to me and said, Robert, read the blazer to put the agents, the dead agents in the blazer so we can hide them from the media. I said, all right, man, let's go. And we put all in. I mean, talk about stacking up 4 people, got a blazer. They're dead, and it's not like, don't hurt them, you know. Put them in there, and they're in the back. And I stayed there with them for like 45 till now, until the EMS comes in with the ambulance, says, okay, we're ready. And we have some guys that come in and we kind of make up the line, and we take out one agent at a time. And while we were taking out Willis, he did a little grumble sound. Okay? And man, for me, David and I were like, oh, he's alive. You know, we was giving it. I should start CPR. And the EMS guy said, hey, it's too late. That's normal. So, okay, so I put them on, take them all out, and they leave. And I walk back to my blazer. I'm already soaked with blood. And I look at my blazer, and all you see is red. I mean, if you do this, you can splash the blood. And I look to the corner, and there was my Bible, the one correctly. It's true story. I go in and I pick it up, and guess where it was opened at? The Book of Revelation. And blood, everything. And I get that Bible, and I walk out to the field, because there was a big open field. And I throw that Bible as far as I could. wasn't far enough. Then I walked to it, and I actually stomped on it. This is the Holy Bible. Which is something I've never forgotten, by the way. And I looked up and I yelled at him and said, "Why, Lord, why? Why do you let a good man like this die at the hands of people like this?" And that's why I put in the book that this was probably the worst day of my life. Yeah.
Wow.
So, you know, it was something that went on, and things I never forgot. And that was the first time when before we took the guys out, that I was able to talk to Cindy. They came in with a big radio, and I was able to call her and tell her I'm alive. And she was out having a party, but she didn't know.
Yeah, she had the insurance papers up to
Yeah. So, just story just goes on and on. There's things that I don't forget that happen, and everything I put in this book is the truth. And you know what else can I say? Anything else? Anybody else?
Before anybody says anything, on behalf of the Heritage Museum, again, I want to congratulate you. Thank you so much for allowing us to host this. In here, you'll find some memorabilia from your football days, Carol Dryden collection. This is from the Carol.
Man, I was young then, you know.
Just a couple of years. Anyway, so I hope you like it, and we're gonna get ready to serve the refreshments, please. Please don't leave, there's plenty. If you don't have a table to sit, there's plenty of tables, side tables, sofas, you're welcome to continue visiting. And then, you wanna come up, if you haven't had your book signed, he'll sign it for you. So again, thank you, Robert, on behalf of Eric Ramos and Elsa Sainz and Lucy Sainz. Thank you for allowing us to